just, there you go, recording's in progress.
Nice.
And I'll just give you permissions in case you want to share your screen.
Yeah, thank you.
We're all good to go. I'll shut up.
Nice. Thanks, Giles. A little bit later as well, have you got breakout room functionality or not? Because we have a little exercise we can do.
Zoom will have it, but I don't know how to use it.
Okay, but do you see breakout rooms down in the bottom of your screen in your Zoom?
No, should there be like a button saying breakout room or something?
Yes.
No, to answer your question, no. I haven't.
Okay, it's fine. We can probably do it as a group exercise. It's all good. Cool. All right. Well, let's get going. Let me share my screen. Let's make sure I share the right screen. And can everyone hear me? Okay, is the sound clear?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Good. All right. So Giles asked if I could come and chat with you guys a little bit about information architecture. So I've just pulled together some very quick slides. There's going to be lots of time for us to just chat through and answer any questions as well. But I thought I'd give just quickly here first a little bit of an overview of IA, and then there's a fun little exercise we can do that will hopefully help put it into practice a little bit. So just to start, I'd love to get from you guys what your kind of definition or thoughts are on what information architecture is.
Don't be scared, everyone. Everyone chip in.
My understanding of it is it's really good for websites. So if you wanted to understand the menu navigation, you would do information architecture. It's you could do exercises to figure out what categories would go where and how people would, the most logical way people would search for something. Yeah.
Okay. So kind of figuring out your menu in your website. Yeah. Any other?
Ollie, what have you got up your sleeve, mate?
I always think it is the arrangements of all the different artifacts and navigation items within a site or a page.
Yeah. Arranging all the different artifacts. Yeah.
Dave, what do you think? I'm gonna keep asking people randomly if they don't answer.
Yeah, I thought I knew it until I saw this screen. I was like, maybe I don't know actual, but it's almost like a blueprint, isn't it, for the whole kind of website, every almost atomic scale, I would say, perhaps.
Yeah. So all of you guys have kind of touched on elements of information architecture, which is great. So it is very much a blueprint. It's the organization of your information, right? So it's a certain layer that happens within. So one easy way to think about this is looking at these different desktops. Does anyone have a desktop that looks like the top left? Or does anyone know anyone?
I
used
to have one like that, but maybe it's because I've only been in my job 5 weeks that it's not like that. But yeah, okay. There have been points where it has been like that, and then
mine was like that until about 2 days ago when I opened a file called to sort and just dumped it all in there.
Oh, you made me feel better, Josh.
I think the new Mac OS actually does it for you now, doesn't it? Kind of it kind of puts it into its own little folder and it can expand. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
But normally, yeah, it would look like that. Absolutely, full of screenshots.
Yeah, that's
full of screenshots, full of files, right? Yeah. You probably know someone you probably know lots of people who fall into one of these 4 quadrants, right? They've either got in the top left just files dumped all over the place. In the top right, at least there's folders. They have like every single folder that's been tidied up, but it's all saved on their desktop. You've got the bottom left, which is, probably your most recent things that they might go and clean up every so often. And then your bottom left, which is nothing on the desktop, right? Yeah. So each one of these is a system in itself. And it's likely that the owner of each of these desktops can find exactly what they need to find, right? But it's also very likely that if anyone else opened their computer, that there would be varying degrees of difficulty in being able to find the same file. Particularly if you look at the top left, trying to find a specific file might be very difficult for somebody who doesn't own that computer. Maybe it would be a little bit easier with the one in the bottom right, arguably. But even that is a guess. So this is one way to think about information architecture, right? How we organize our information. So we're all going to have a different system. Another way to think about it is, how do you organize the books on your bookshelf? So again, a bit of a discussion here. Does anyone have a system? First of all, that's the first question. Does anyone have a system in how they organize their books on their bookshelf? No. No. No.
Maybe by size, but you know, some people like to color code them, and it's frowned upon within the.
Yes. Well, color coding would look beautiful, but how do you know what color is the elements of user experience? Yeah, exactly. I need to go find that right now. How am I going to find that?
Yeah.
Okay, so not
alphabetize them, but that's just me.
Alphabetize. Okay, alphabetize by the title or by the author?
Oh, I knew there was another question if I said that. Title. Yeah, there you go.
Title. Okay. Yeah. And if you'd said author, I then would have asked by first name or last name. So there's lots of different ways, as you can see, right? Imagine going into a library. Imagine if they organized their books by the size of the book. How would you find it? How would you find anything, right? There'd be one person that would probably know where to find everything, and that was the person who organized it in the first place. In the same way that with your desktop, you're the only person that can go and find and retrieve information. And for everyone who said that they don't have a system for their bookshelf, you do have a system. It's wherever you last put it, right? Which also means you might still know how to find that last book, because you'll go, yeah, I was just reading this one and I put it in the top right hand cubby. So it works for you, but for anyone else, it's not going to work, right? And so we can apply this when we think about digital as well. Specifically chosen very physical examples here, because this is what information architecture is. So libraries are actually a really good example, because they have struggled for a very long time in how to arrange the world's information, right? Because books can be about absolutely anything. So how do you create a categorization system in order to make them easy to find, so that anyone can walk into the library and find the thing that they're looking for? And the thing with categorization systems is that you can imply a lot of meaning in the way that you categorize them. So the model with which you group books in this case and categorize them gives off information to the people who are using it. So what do I mean by this? If we take the Dewey Decimal, you can see that of the hundreds of categories set aside for topics for religion, so just looking at religion, 88 categories are reserved for Christianity. Judaism and Islam get one category each, but Buddhists, Sikhs, and Jains all are bundled into the same category. So what does that tell someone who's coming in and trying to find a book on religion? Does it say that Christianity is way more popular or way more important or way bigger? There's information that's being inferred, right? So we can think about content as the material that we're designing the information system for, and the information is the context that people attach to it. So those two things are very different, right? So content is the things that are being arranged, in this case, the books, and the information is how we interpret the arrangement or of the sequence of things. So I might interpret that Christianity is more important than Buddhism because it has 88 categories and Buddhism is bundled with a couple other religions. So let's take a different example and look at that. So here we're looking at Tim Hortons, which is a Canadian brand of donuts. It's kind of like a Greg's. Maybe you know about it. There's a Tim Hortons.
We have that in the UK now, yeah.
Yeah, there's a few. Glasgow as well. Yeah. So anyways, that's by the by, but we're looking here. So we can see in the top left, we've got honey dip donut. We've got a Boston cream donut, which is empty. We've got the raspberry donut, which has 4 donuts. We've got a blueberry bloom donut, 1 left. We've got the blueberry donut in the middle that's empty with a little making a fresh batch. So what is this? What do we see here? First of all, what's the content?
Lovely, yummy donuts.
The lovely donuts, exactly.
I really want one now.
Yes, a byproduct of information architecture with me is that you always leave hungry. No, so the content is the donuts. What's the information that you take away from this? So what meaning might you take away from the fact that there are no blueberry donuts left?
You see what's most popular.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. They're most popular. What if they were actually... Sorry?
Cheapest.
Chocolate glazed ones aren't doing too well. There's something mysterious about these.
The quality of them.
Yeah,
right.
Advertising for a start, so.
Yeah, yeah. Or maybe they're the cheapest, someone said. Yeah.
What if like a burnt bagel?
What if they were left over from yesterday? And so there was few of them left. What if actually the chocolate glazed donut is the most popular, so they've restocked?
Okay.
But then I'd still question quality.
Quality. Why?
Well, if they've been for 24 hours, they can't be very tasty.
Maybe. So then what time is it, right? Suddenly we need to know what time is it when I've walked in. What's the other information around the system that's going to help me understand what is the information here? So if this is information architecture as well, right? So we can kind of boil down information architecture to organizing stuff so that it's easy to find and that it's intuitive. And we need to remember that the way that we organize that stuff will imply meaning to the people who are wandering through that content, right? Who are trying to find stuff in that organizational system. So this applies to your websites, it applies to your products, it applies to anything that you're creating. So it's not just websites, and it's not just navigation. Navigation is a part of it, but it's not, it's like an underlying, it's the organizational system beneath that. And it will, one of the ways to organize, or how you see the organization, is through the navigation, but that's not the only thing. So how does this fit?
Oh, you froze then, Daria.
No? Maybe?
Yeah, you're back there. You froze for about 5 seconds.
Am I back? Okay, I'm back.
That's good.
I was just saying, has anyone heard of The Elements of User Experience? Is a book by Jesse James Garrett. If you haven't, read it. It's like the foundation of UX. And one of the things that he talks about here, this is his very famous diagram, is that each plane here, we're looking at 5 planes. So this is like the conceptual framework of what UX is. And so each plane is dependent on the plane below it. So decisions are made in strategy that are going to define the scope. Decisions made in scope are going to find the structure. Decisions made in the structure are going to define the skeleton, and so on. And it moves from abstract to concrete, right? So with each plane, like down at the bottom of strategy, the concepts are more abstract. The way you test it is more abstract. The way that the artifacts that you might produce in order to help communicate the strategy is more abstract. And then as you go through the planes, it gets more concrete and more clear. So IA fits in the structure. We're in the middle plane. This is another way from the same book, but it's another kind of view of that framework, right? So you've got down at the bottom, you've got your user needs, site objectives, moving through content, requirements, specification, and then that third layer, the structure layer, that's where information architecture and interaction design sits. So we must go through this process no matter what we're designing, right? Because everything is going to impact each plane above it. So if we just jump straight into visual design and we haven't thought about the structure underneath it, then it's probably going to be really hard for a lot of people to find the information because we haven't put the time into thinking about it. So just a helpful little definition as well. So information architecture defines the structure of the information. Interaction design enables people to manipulate and contribute to that information. And visual design communicates these possibilities to people and creates affinity to them. So they're super, super important. That comes from Luke Wroblewski. So that is where it fits in to the design process. We want to be looking at it before we jump into wireframes, before we jump into visual design, but after we know what our strategy is, right? Now, one of the big things with information architecture is it's ultimately how we structure information and how we categorize it. And luckily, we have a very easy framework to remind us how to do this. So these are called organizational schemes. So there are only 5 ways to organize information, to organize content. You can do it by location, you can do it by alphabetical, you can do it by time, category, and hierarchy. Okay, and you can mix these things together. That's fine. You can have multiple schemes together, but really it comes down to you only have these 5 to choose from, which makes things very easy. So if we think about location, if you go to IKEA's website, the first thing it asks you is, where are you? Which geography location do you want to go to? So that's first starting by location. And then you get into bedroom, living room, kitchen, right? So that's a category. Category is kind of a catch-all. You can create different types of categories. For IKEA, it's by location in the room, right? Alphabetical is pretty obvious, A to Z or backwards. So you might have a team company page, and you might just list everybody alphabetically. Makes it easy. Maybe you put the CEO at the top, and then you list everybody alphabetically. What does that say? Well, that's kind of now mixing hierarchy and alphabetical, right? So we've got hierarchy of senior team at the top, and then we go alphabetical. And that infers the meaning that, I think the CEO or the leadership team clearly feel like they are above the rest of the team. That might give off that kind of a hierarchical organization. Whereas if everyone is just listed alphabetically, that might give off a non-hierarchical organization. So as a potential recruit, if I'm looking at different company websites and looking at their team page, that might be the meaning that I'm inferring based on the way that it's been organized. Whether that's actually how they intended it or not, if it wasn't designed, thinking about that, right? But I might take that away, looking at that as an example. So that's hierarchy and alphabetical. And then time is time. So things like social media feeds, that's based on most recent feeds, most recent posts. So that's an example of time. Any questions on this? Does this make sense as the 5 schemes?
Yep, it does.
Yeah, cool. So that's the really good news, right? Is that it only comes down to these 5 things. So when you're thinking about information architecture and you're thinking about how you're going to organize content and kind of show your content, it comes down to remembering your latch as an easy reminder, and then figuring out what one or which ones you might use. So the last thing I want to talk about before we jump into the exercise is the process that we might go through in order to design the IA. And it's a relatively simple process. It can get quite complicated when you get into the detail, but at the heart of it, there's 3 main things that you need to do. You need to understand your content and what you're working with first, which is a content audit. So you need to gather all the content and evaluate it. And then you need to do some card sorting to figure out how your users group content in a meaningful way to them and what language they use to describe it. And then you need to evaluate whether that card sorting makes sense at a more high, like at a larger in quant, right? So you need to make sure that it makes sense for a larger audience. And there's different tools that we can use to do this. So a content audit can be time consuming and grueling, but it's incredibly important. So, I mean, you have to do it in order to know what content you're dealing with, right? So you have to look at the mess first in order to then clean it up. If we go back to the bookshelf, it would be you taking out all of the books on your bookshelf and kind of starting to investigate what do you have there? What are the different types of books that you have? Maybe you've got multiple people's books, like in your family. It's not just one audience member, it's lots of different audience members. Maybe you've got multiple bookshelves. So we need to go through this process, and we can use spreadsheets, and we can use things like site crawlers for websites to pull the sitemap essentially and all of the different pages and URLs. And we would go through and we would do first pass, and we would look at, you know, what content is outdated, if anything, like often blog articles or, you know, even non-blog articles, just any sort of content can end up becoming outdated. So you kind of go through a process of what do we have, tidying it up, and then doing a bit of an evaluation. Is this content still relevant? Does it need to be updated? Is it just fine as it is? Right? So you kind of have 3 buckets of bin it, update it, keep it. And then you'd probably also want to identify, do we have any gaps? Is there any other content that's missing that we might need? So that's your content audit. And then depending on the size of the project that you're doing, you know, you might not do a card sort with every single page, every single piece of content, because, you know, most websites are massive.
Daria, but you just ask a quick question. Who would you do this alone, or would you team up with people to do this?
For a content audit?
Yeah.
I mean, in agency, we often, well, in my experience, you know, we always work with 2 UXers. So it'd be 2 UXers doing this. But if you're working, like, it can be on your own as well. It doesn't have to be. It's not like a big group effort. The evaluation, you might need multiple stakeholders involved in order to do that. So you might facilitate those as workshops or conversations, or even trying to figure out who owns what content. That can be a little bit more of a collaborative or group effort. But ultimately, it's not like it's not something you would do as a big workshop. You're not designing something new here. You're cleaning stuff up and gathering. So you don't want too many chefs in the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
It's just helpful when you have a massive site, to have a couple people doing it. Otherwise it might take a little while. And yeah, so that's your content audit. And then you want to think about, okay, having to pick which pages you might do in a card sort. So you would want to think about what are the different types of templates that we might have on this website, or if it's a product or an app, like what are the different areas or types of content within it. And then you want to have enough of a sample to be representative of that. So that's where, you know, a little bit of trial and error will come. And that is where a little bit of the skill is, in making sure that you have the right content in your card sort, in order to make sure that your output and the final outcome is valid and representative of the whole site. So we've done our content audit. We'll go into card sorting. Card sorting is very simple. You have the content pages on cards, as you can see here, and you shuffle them up like a deck, and you give them to different users, and you ask them to create groups that are meaningful to them, and then you ask them to name them. So here we can see the top pink stickies are the name of those groups, and that would be something that, you know, that's where you can start to see the language that users use in order to group content, and you can see how they think content might be grouped, the similarities and the differences.
So Daria, in this example here, sorry, would you get people to group all the white cards first of all, and then come up with names for the categories afterwards?
Yeah, so we would say, like, it's a bit of trial and error, right? Because they're going to start making groups, and then they might grab a card and go, oh, actually, I think these pull over here, and this makes a group. There's lots of different ways that you can group the cards. So it sort of it comes organically and naturally. They might end up going, no, we're really happy with this group. We know that that's a strong group. Let's label it, and then let's figure out these cards. It's a bit organic, but I'd say start with figuring out your groupings do the white cards for a little while, move them around, try and figure out, what feels right. And then when you're starting to get comfortable with it, you can start adding the labels.
And
there's two types.
Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, go on. No, go on.
Internally, if you're working, I suppose, client side rather than agency side, and you're doing an internal project, you can almost just, I suppose, roam floor to floor with clutching a pack of cards and just get everyone's just general input in pretty quick time, I'd have thought.
Yeah, but you want to make sure, who are your users, right? So Conway's law says that whatever an internal organizational structure is, that is reflected through any digital output. So chances are, if you take it just to internal stakeholders, they will group it the way that they understand the organization is run, which is not necessarily how their customers see them, right?
Yeah.
So it depends on what the organization is, but you really, really want to be doing this with the end users who will ultimately be needing to use the website. If it's an internal intranet, yes, use the employees, right? But often what happens is you get false results if you just take it internally, because they'll either do what they're used to, which is how it was already grouped, how they've learned, they might have learned the bad IA. So then they'll just recreate that because that's what they're used to.
Daria,
but it can be certainly a good place to start. Go on.
If you were to name your labels before you got them to sort the cards, what kind of issues or problems could you see doing that first, if any?
Yeah, so there's two types of card sorts: open card sort and closed card sort. There are definitely situations where you'd want to have a closed card sort. So closed card sort is, hey, I have these 5 buckets already defined. Here's a bunch of content. You put them into those 5 buckets. Sometimes if you do a big kind of IA restructure piece of work, content is websites, apps, digital products, they're living, breathing things, right? So we are constantly creating more content. So with inertia, things get messy. So it's not like you can do your IA and then everything's great and it's going to be fine forever. No, you're going to have to keep, as new content is created, you have to keep sorting it and making sure that your buckets are right. So maybe you do a big IA piece of work, and through that you define your buckets, and then every 6 months or every year you take the new content and you do a closed card sort and go, based on the work that we did before, where would you put those things, right? So like Spotify is not really going to change the main menu items now, right? Because that's what we're used to. So you might do more of a closed card sort with any new features that they have to see where they might fit with the current menu. But then you also might have the option to create an extra bucket if it really doesn't fit with, you might have an extra new one. So there's lots of scenarios when you might use closed or open.
Is there ever a scenario where you do a bit of a hybrid?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you might know that you have to have certain buckets. And so you predefine those ones, and then you say, here's your cards, sort them into either the buckets that are there or create new ones. Absolutely fine.
Perfect.
So there's a few different tools that we can use. Optimal Workshop, which is a paid tool, but it's a great tool. And it is a suite of tools. So there's Optimal Sort, which is part of the Optimal Workshop product, and that does online card sorting for you. So it's great because it means you can share it. You can share the link to lots of people. You can get a larger sample size, but there's also some really good analysis tools as part of it, so it helps with analysis, because analyzing card sorts manually can be.
I was about to jump in and say the analysis, the stuff is really good on Optimal Sort. I think the grouping it shows, particularly the way it stacks with the graphs.
Yeah.
Again, I wish I had a screenshot to show you, but that is really useful for like showing stakeholders.
Yeah, exactly. And you can pull together really nice decks with some data visualization. Go, look, here's how we analyzed it, and here's what we decided the right outcome is. But if you don't have, the budget, or you can't get Optimal Sort, you can use paper Post-its. It's not an impossible thing. So that's card sorting. And then the last thing we want to do is tree test. And really this, I would say, use, again, Optimal Workshop has another tool called Tree Jack, and it really, really helps. So tree testing or evaluating, we want to use quant. We want to get a lot of data rather than card sorting, which you can do qual, you can do in a much smaller sample size. So tree testing, you want to get a large sample size, and it's where you take your IA so you've done your card sort, right? And then you're going to put together your new structure, you're going to take that old content audit Excel spreadsheet, you're going to create a new one, and you're going to have your new structure for all of your content. And then you can upload that into Tree Jack, and then you create tasks. So tasks might be like, on a restaurant website, or even say on Deliveroo as an example, you might say, you want to find an Indian curry nearby that has matar paneer. Can you go and find where you would find the matar paneer? And so what tree testing does is it removes any images. It just shows the structure, right? And kind of the hierarchy. And so it forces people to just find where they think that content would sit based on the groups and the structure that you've created. So it's a really good way of stripping out any other visual cues and just going for the structure. And we aim to get a 70% pass for every task, right? Because it's impossible to get 100, but 70 is a good kind of what to aim for. And if anything fails below 70, then you need to go back in and rework it. And so this is an example here of some of the analysis that it will do, where it shows you how many kind of paths were taken down the right way. So the green kind of path here is saying that somebody, you start here and this many people went down the correct path, and then that many people went down the correct path, and then they chose the correct answer. Blue means people go back and forward. So that can be a sign of your content structure not making as much sense if they're having to go, oh, I think maybe it's here. Oh, no, maybe it's here. Oh, no, what's down there? Oh, no, maybe it's over here, right? So the more they're kind of moving back and forth, that's blue. And then red is they've incorrectly gone down the wrong path and then chosen the wrong answer. So it gives you all of that data. So it's a very, very good, very, very good tool.
Can I ask just a quick question on this?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I was going to say, because obviously we've talked about it from the perspective that this takes place after a card sort. I mean, do you find yourself using this a lot in the other sense that this is where you pull on a thread? This may say you have a hunch that you think this particular journey is not amazing, and then would you validate that using this first ever? Have you tried that kind of way of doing it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I've said we've got three main things, right? Content audit, card sorting, and tree testing. But really, you could do lots of tree tests along the way. You could tree test the current IA and then tree test a new IA, and you can compare it. You want it to improve. You could use it to, as you say, diagnose. I think there's a problem with this particular area of the site. Let's go in. Yes, there is. Okay, let's do a card sort. You might do your content audit, do a card sort, tree test, find that something's failed, do another card sort, tree test again, right? Like it's an evaluation method that you can use really at any point to help you, whatever you think you need. And if you think you need the current and then your new version to compare as ammunition to get the project going, then do it at the beginning and do it at the end. Or if you feel like you need to compare to make sure that you've not made any part of the, if there was something that's working with the current one, you don't want to lose that as well, right? So it can be a good way to make sure you haven't gone backwards. Good question.
Daria, can I ask a question? With the content audit, is that just when you have a current website to go off? Like, what if you don't have a website and it's being developed? How would you work around that?
Do you have any content like prepared for the website?
Well, currently I'm at work. I'm working on a startup, so they've got a home page and a couple of other pages, but it's pretty much a dummy. Like they don't really use it as like in promotion or anything. It's more for us to like look. but we're completely changing it. It's just like a very dated. So we have like we're literally almost like building the business and the marketing and digital like side for them.
Yeah. So in that case, you wouldn't really need to do a crawl of your current content, but you could take what you know it's going to change, how it's going to change, and you can leverage that to go, okay, well, we know this is the direction we're going to go, so we might need, this is how it should inform the structure of the site or the structure of the product. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah. Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah. Any other questions before? We've got a quick exercise we can do. Well, quick or not so quick, it can take as long as we need it to, but it's quite fun. And it might just help bring to life some of these concepts. But I just want to make sure that we have enough time to answer any other questions first.
I think, did you mention a law earlier on? Was it Connolly's law? I wrote down.
Conway's Law. Conway's Law.
Comedian. Conway's Law. Okay.
Conway, Conway.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, helpful if you have, helpful to use laws and theories to back up as evidence if you're trying to push anything through. Yeah. But Conway's Law essentially says whatever your internal structure is will seep through to the external digital side. Right. Okay. So if you want to have massive change, you're probably going to need to have internal change. And if you're only asking for, in the context of what we're saying, if you're only asking internal stakeholders to do your card sort, then it's going to reflect the internal structure as opposed to how users might actually would interpret or navigate through the site. Yeah. Okay. Conway's Law. I've probably butchered. If you go read the theory, I've probably not articulated that well, but.
Can I just ask about the tree testing analysis? I came across one, but I wasn't 100% sure really how you get into the nitty gritty. I mean, are you reading the circles as if they were pie charts to know that? So you'd say like 50% went back and 40% went this way, and to give you analysis of just the direction and by percentages.
Can you still see my screen?
Yeah.
My Chrome. Let me just show you because it's so much easier.
Oh, that's just the do you remember ages ago we did that small card sort? This is the same application we used back then, actually.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good tool, this is.
So a few different charts, which is what I wanted to show you, because they are pie charts, yes. So it's showing you just over half moved this way or that way. But let me just show you this because it's probably easier just to see it. Which one? Nope. I'm not affiliated with these guys, by the way, so it's not like I'm getting they are really good. So view the results. So you get a task success rate. So direct success is they went immediately in the first try to the correct place. Indirect means they had to jump around a little bit, but eventually got there. Direct failure means they went directly to the wrong place. Indirect failure means they wobbled around a little bit. And a skip is also important because that can tell you either your task wasn't clear enough or they really struggled, they couldn't find anything and they were too scared to select something, so they just skipped it. So that's equally important. And direct skip or indirect skip. So direct skip might be, oh, the task really didn't make sense. And indirect skip might be, I've gone through this a few times and then I just couldn't figure it out.
Do you set multiple tasks?
Yeah. So here's an example. So tasks. Suppose that you're not a Bananacom customer. Find the lowest cost home broadband subscription. And they would have gone through the IA to try and find the page that they think that would be on. So then here I can see that there was a 31% success rate. And I would go into my pie chart, pie tree. So I can see it in a few different ways. So here's where we start. I can see that 50% took the correct path. They went to the internet category and then they went to home internet plans. That was the correct path. But 33% of them moved on to the wrong path. So you can start to see here the actual data.
Mm-hmm.
And you can view it slightly differently as well. You can download them so you can create reports really easily. So each one has a pie tree, and you can see the time it took them as well. So how easier, like if somebody spent ages trying to find it, that also means it probably wasn't that clear. So you can interpret the data. I'll show you what it actually looks like as well, because that might also help.
Is there best practice rules of how quickly somebody should find something?
I don't have a specific number, no, but I mean, you would want them to be pretty quick, because I mean, the longer it takes them to find it, the more frustrated they are, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you would have your tasks. So your son has just bought a smartphone and you want him to keep it safe. Where would you look to buy a protective case? Okay, so I'm looking to buy a protective case. So cell phones and plans. Accessories, I think I'd find it there, right? So then I go, okay, you're about to move house, you want to transfer your phone and internet to a new address. Okay. My account. No. So now I've gone back. So I'm now doing an indirect. Is it help and support? Moving house? Okay. That's where I think I'd find it. Right. So you can see how you would set up 10, no more than 10 tasks. And you would target different areas in the site, thinking about the tasks. You want to make the tasks as relatable as possible, right? So not like, go find, contact us. No, it's
that's
like,
the point I was going to make. The question wording is so important at this stage, because it is basically it's like a heuristic task, isn't it? So you know, and you're not there to rephrase the question for them like you would be in a qual test.
Exactly. And you want to try and avoid using the exact same language that is in the IA. Is this going to let me go back? No, but like moving house or changing your home address, right? So those are the same things, because what you don't want is people will go moving house. Okay, scan, just trying to find moving house, and they're not actually doing the task like they would be in real life. So you would skew the data in that instance. Does that help a little bit with Tree Jack? You can see how you analyze.
Right.
That was a great refresh for me as well. I've not been on it in a long time, so that's really good to see again.
Cool, good, awesome. Right, well, we have 12 minutes. I don't know if that's enough time to do this task. Shall we just try anyways? Let's just do it.
Let's try and see what happens. So as long as you're okay with that, Daria, I don't want to kill your time.
No, it's fine. Let me just share with you a link to Mural. Hopefully you'll all be able to get in. That's the question. Oh, it's already here.
Is it Miro or Miro? That's the big discussion I've always had.
I saw something on LinkedIn today where they said, remember that Miro themselves answered that question. They just remembered that Miro is your hero. I mean, that's how you pronounce it.
Yeah.
Ah.
Nice.
I've just posted into the chat, so if everyone can try and join me. I personally love Miro, but we have Mural at work, so I'm stuck with Mural.
Oh, this is another tool. Maybe your accent threw me a little bit then. We have Miro, Mural, yeah.
Yeah, Mural. So while you guys are all getting in, you can still see my screen. So my spice drawer looks like this. It's a mess. So it's really hard for me to find the spices that I need when I'm cooking. And I really love cooking vegetarian Indian curries. And in the summer, I cook a lot of Mediterranean dishes. And my partner really loves cooking spicy Thai dishes, stir fries, or greasy British food. So help us come up with a system to organize our spices. So what you're going to do And because we're not in breakout rooms, I think let's just all stay in this group one, first group. So as a team, have a look through the unsorted spices. There's lots of information in there. So this is your card sort, right? So read the information, work together, and you're going to come up with a better system to organize it. So group them and try out a few different category, different schemes, organizational schemes. So remember your latch, try them out. Don't just settle for the first one. And I'm here to answer any questions as your user, as the end user, if you have any questions. But work as a team to come up. You have to agree all together on a scheme or multiple schemes.
So are we just dragging all these and dropping them onto sorted groups?
Yeah, so you've got your light gray area over here where you can start to group them. So grab them from the unsorted area and pull them.
Can we create headers with the stickies?
Yep.
Or is that
Please do. Yep.
Okay, so let's all just start grabbing some and moving them across.
See, I guess if we think of the latch method, I guess it would be categories. So for me, a category would be like I don't know, maybe hot. If there's hot ones like cayenne and things like that.
Makes sense.
So like the
herbs,
flavor.
Herbs, is it? The herbs can, it's like thyme's a herb, right? So I would have herbs. I think my organization, I have 2 giant boxes. One is stuff that's like green, and then the other one is everything else. I think that's my loose spice organization at home. I know it's disappointing for a UXer.
What about
so think about the user? I've given you some information on the type of food that we like to cook.
Yeah, good point.
Can you
help
vegetarian? So it's vegetarian Indian curries.
One of the titles needs to be greasy British food, I believe.
Yeah.
That was the main title.
So we'd piece together some Indian.
So by countries then, if they like Indian or Thai or British.
You could even have Italian like then, but you get some crossover as well though, don't you? Because something like oregano is used across a few.
Let's try not to otherwise we'll
What about, again, without throwing too many, what is the one like we could have a category for like every day for like salt and pepper, right? Because salt and pepper is used like all meals. It's not just used for breakfast. Because again, another categories could be breakfast, dinner, lunch, you know.
I would say that would be time, as in frequency, by time. Yeah. As a scheme.
Paprika. Used approximately, that's interesting, 15 times in the last 12 weeks, 10 times. Is everyone grouped in green, are they?
Sorry?
I'm just looking at how people have grouped them so far, and they're in like, people have grouped them all greens together.
I was going to say, can we group them by hex value?
But wouldn't
that be appropriate?
Just going back to at the top here, it says, I love cooking vegetarian Indian curries and some Mediterranean dishes. So wouldn't you want to be grouping the Indian ones together? Because that's how we know this user likes to cook.
That's what I tried to start doing in the bottom left.
Yeah, I guess it's what. So Garrett. Oh, you've done it here already, yeah?
Yeah, in the bottom left.
There you go. Coriander, curry leaves, cardamom. There's the fella. Smoke.
The really difficult part is the crossovers, because a bay leaf can be used in just about everything in my experience.
I have a question. Can you make duplicates of them? So that, say, one food is British and also Italian, so you need more than one. If you grouped them in different groups, wouldn't you? You couldn't have them only in one.
But I only have one bottle.
Yeah, that's the thing.
So there's only one.
Do create 2 jars. Is that the solution?
So,
are you talking about decanting into another jar?
Could we have like an everyday one that could almost be like a everyday / general? Because like my spice one, I have ones that are at the front because I use them all the time.
I thought the same
like
thing.
Oregano, I use all the time, but
salt
I'm not
and pepper.
necessarily always making Italian food. So it could just be like ones that.
What's at the top as well? Indian. You've got in the summer. I cook a lot of Mediterranean dishes. So Mediterranean, obviously saffron, Because you stick a load of garlic in there to level that, don't they? Cayenne pepper. Celery salt will probably go in there. Chinese.
Can we do we copy and paste the stickies to create more categories?
I wouldn't copy and paste the stick. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
You keep the stickies to 6.
No, you can create as many categories as you think is going to be needed. You just don't duplicate a spice because there's only one jar of each.
Yeah.
And that's true if you're thinking about IA when you're doing digital products. You don't want to have duplicated content. You might access that content multiple ways, but where it lives structurally, it needs to have one home.
I'm not going to look at my spice jar the same way next time I look at it.
I also find nutmeg a funny one. Where does that actually live?
I think nutmeg's an Oriental spice, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, but I know it from kind of custard cream tart. British. It's a funny one, isn't it?
Like
yeah, true, yeah.
Yeah, that's another way to organize is like by like what types of cooking.
So you could say like dessert, you mean, or
baking.
Baking, yeah.
And sweet and
you might
savory, whatever, yeah.
Smoked paprika is a tough one. That's like an everyday one for me, but I don't think it is for everyone else.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, although I think my missus would have a word about that. Yeah.
Would you think you'd put? We've got the Chinese 5 spice, right, and the peppercorn. You put into Oriental. Do you think you'd put that with the Indian ones and call that sort of Asian? Because a few times, I've tried to cook something and I haven't got quite the Indian ingredients I want, so I just think, I've got some Chinese stuff and I can mix and match a little bit.
Yeah, I agree.
So rather than just go Indian, just maybe call that Asian.
We've got Oriental up.
Yeah, I put that there at the right hand side.
That's what I'm saying. We've only got 2 in Oriental. It seems like a very peculiar little category.
But just just add them and then just put Asian spices.
Yeah,
that's all of it.
Fennel is probably more Indian, isn't it? Than would you use that in any other cooking? Poor old mint as well. Not getting a look in. Where does that live?
Mint. I'd say that's herb, wouldn't it?
No, yeah, it's a herb. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what.
It's just more common to be fresh. You wouldn't really have dried mint. Isn't so common, I guess.
No.
I think for me, like the thing that would depends, because obviously we've got one really hyperinflated category there. So, for me, there's something to do with, in my own kind of selfish way, I like to group loosely by heat as well. But it depends. I don't see like chili flakes or anything. I guess it depends on the quantity, right? Because cayenne pepper's got a heat to it.
Yeah.
Depending on what type of paprika you have, that can have a heat to it as well. Some of these have heat, but there's probably not enough to justify that as a category.
So I would say that your Asian spices is quite big, so that's going to start to get quite unruly and unorganized. So either you might want to split that into 2 categories, or you might want to think about what's your sub scheme for how you will organize Asian spices.
I thought we did,
because that's going to turn into a messy.
We did. We had Oriental and Indian, but then it got amalgamated. Yes, someone made an executive decision, which wouldn't go down well if you're in a house with someone and they came home to that. I think.
Who's messed my herbs and spices up?
So, should we split Asian into 2 then? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, I think so. Because one's East Asia and one is South Asia.
Nothing.
Yeah, can someone get one of those globes or atlas out or something?
Figure it out. Draw like East Asia and South Asia. Is that how you do it? Is it?
Hey, it's a theory. Is it not been tested? It needs to be. Yeah, it needs to be tested.
I reckon because you said it says the user likes Mediterranean food and Indian, and if you look at the last used in, it like there's Indians not always at the top, so it could categorize like some of them Mediterraneans first, so we could do the ones that are more likely to be Mediterranean separately.
Yeah, that's a good shout.
Like sage. I can't even say that one that's spelled Marjoram.
Asheram. Is that what I say it?
Yeah, so that says Mediterranean first. Saffron could be. Paprika it was second in Spanish, but yeah, that could be.
I think this, we mentioned before about I think it was Dave that said the books are all potentially organized by the size. I think that the spices, in many people's cases, are probably organized by the size as well, aren't they? Because
mine is not organized.
I love the idea of having all my spices the exact same jar size and everything, but because I go to different shops, they just never are,
Okay.
Unless you make your own. You
I'm not that clever.
Yeah. But you can see, we're coming up to the hour here. You can see how there's lots of different ways to organize this, right? And how, all of you have different ways that you might gravitate towards organizing it. So, if you're designing this for me as a single user, all that matters is the way that I would think about it. But if you're designing this as a standardized way to organize spices for a certain subgroup of people, then you can understand how even more complicated it is, and you need to start to run these kinds of card sorts to see, okay, how are different people organizing them, and what are the most common themes, and then what is the definitive decision that we're going to do to make this easy to find. So yeah, it's a good little exercise.
Yeah,
great.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
It was really good fun. Thank you.
I was enjoying it too.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I was learning about the world, I was learning about cooking, culinary practices. It's quite educational.
This group has really expanded since I've been here, yeah. I was going to ask a question. Is this like a template that you've created or lifted from this tool? Like, I really like the template. So I was just wondering, is this one that's kind of pre-created, or have you kind of worked magic on
Mural? This? No, I just created this.
Yeah, it's really good.
Good. Thanks. The card sorting, the spices specifically, was something that I stole from a lead from a previous agency that I worked at, he did this exercise with us, and it was really, really good. So
it's very relatable.
Take credit for the idea, but yeah,
I think if there were breakout rooms, you could probably see that there'd be quite a few different structures there, because the way we're kind of
I think we'd see who the best chefs were. That's for sure.
I think
I can only apologise for my budget version of Zoom. I wouldn't have breakout rooms. I'll get the commercial line.
No worries.
Wonderful.
I just wanted to finish, guys, with sharing one last slide with you. Just if you want to come back to the Zoom. I've got here a bunch of books if you are interested in getting into IA a little bit more, and kind of UX in general. But these are some really, really good tools out there, really good books, which you can nerd out on and learn a lot more about the subject, because it's simple in theory, but actually in practice it can be quite challenging.
That was actually going to be
so I just wanted to.
Thanks for that, Daria. That was going to be my question, actually. Have you got any recommended text and stuff?
Yeah.
But interestingly enough, this morning, so I'm starting to look at bringing some books and texts through to the team that we're trying to build at TalkTalk, and that Don't Make Me Think is one that I found on PDF of this morning. They're free download, so I can pop that in the chat if anyone needs that. But that's a really good book, that one is. But all of the stuff's really cool. And I noticed Katie's found the elements of user experience PDF and popped it in this chat as well. So cheers for that, Katie.
Oh, good. Yeah, that is the base. That's like, start there. Elements of user experience. It's like the foundation of UX. That and the design of everyday things, which isn't in here, but Don Norman.
Yeah, that's a good book.
It's a very good book. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Nice.
Well, we'll stop recording now, just because may as well.